Brother Hunter Stallman a hand clap. Let's give him our attention. All right, amen.
Good afternoon, everybody. If y'all don't mind, I'm going to move over to the side. And it's not because of my height. I mean, kind of, but I feel like I'm extra shiny when I stand right there in those lights. So I'm going to move out of the way. So, y'all can sit down. Y'all can go ahead and be seated for a minute. I'm not going to get right into it. Before I get into the word tonight, I want to go ahead and just thank not just the people that are on the platform with me every Sunday that I'm up here, or Ashton or Brittany, but I just want to thank everybody in the congregation, because y'all are my family. Y'all are my church family. You know, I didn't just get developed by Sister Crystal. I didn't get just developed by Ashton. I watch every single person in here, and I learn something new every day, and I'm so thankful that I go to a church that I can do that. We're going to go ahead and start the reading of the word in John chapter 4. Jesus answered and said unto her, If thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, Give me to drink, thou would have asked him, and he would have given thee living water. And I have more of that, but I'm going to stop right there, because the title of my sermon, or message, or whatever you want to call it, is Two Kinds of Water. And you can go ahead and be seated again. Get a little workout. But it's two kinds of water. And this came to me when I was driving back from school one night. It was just one of those rare, or not even rare, but just weird moments of where God just used me to talk to an audience that wasn't even there yet. I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that it had to be for something. So I pulled out my phone and I started recording myself, and it's really awkward to go back to listen to me just yelling in my car a bunch of scripture, but it all came together. It all came together in time. But two kinds of water, the more I started to think on that, I started to think, what is the other kind of water? If Jesus is talking about right here in verse 10, the living water, then there's got to be another kind of water. And I definitely want that living water, but I want to know what kind of waters to avoid. So I started to think, why wouldn't everybody just use the living water? Why wouldn't we just? And the more that I got into it, the more that I began to see these three reasons that were just evident. And the first one being is that because we don't know. We don't know about the living water. I've been in a spot where I knew about it, but I don't know about it. I knew it was over there, but I didn't know what it really was. I didn't know it would make it to where I could never thirst again. And if you look into the John 4, and we keep going, she very clearly doesn't know. She said, I'll just go back into it. The woman saith unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof himself, and his children, and his cattle? So she doesn't know of the living water. And how many people in here know people that don't know of the living water? How many people have family members that don't know of the living water? Or loved ones? I look into that story, and I see one major reason of why we don't just drink from his well. Why don't we let that well spring up inside of us as he promised later in that reading? And then I have to look at it because I already have that well, and it's my responsibility to go out into whoever, my family, to go out onto my campus, go out into my work, and find those people that don't know the living water, just as Jesus does right here. Because he doesn't just go, "Oh, you only drink that kind of water. I'm not gonna deal with you." He says, if you knew me, you'd want my water. If you knew me, truly knew me, the water would be in you and springing up out of you. And when it springs up out of you, he didn't say you just be full of water. He said it'd spring up out of you and it'd go out into others. Other people are going to be affected by the water. Other people are going to be feeling that water that he's put inside of you. And then, if you go over to, let's see, hold on, I got to check back on my notes. The second reason that I found that people don't use this living water is because we're so used to using the water that we already use. Whether it be just anything that's not Jesus, whatever social media, like that's probably the tamest one, but the one that takes up the most time. I have the Bible app right next to my Instagram app, and if you look back at it over the past couple months up until I started really getting back into this, the times aren't very equal. They're kind of slanted in one direction. So it makes you think, what water are we using to kill our time? What water are we using to numb the pain? What water are we using to escape the world that we're placed in? If we go over to Mark 5, I'm going to start in verse 1. And they came over unto the other side of the sea, into a country of, pardon me, I can't pronounce this one, I've tried. And when he came out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken into pieces. Neither could any man tame him. And always night and day he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice and said, What I to do with thee, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me. For he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, What is thy name? And he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. And we besought him much that he would not send them out of the country. Now there was nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine. And all the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and unclean spirits. And the unclean spirits went out, and entered into the swine. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea, and they were choked out. I'm going to spend some more time on this one. So, I don't believe that this man was born with thousands of demons tormenting him day in and day out. I don't believe that he was even born with 100. I believe that at some point in his life, it started with just one. It started with just one thing that he let into his life. Just one drink, one party, one smoke, one more scroll, one more swipe, one more this, one more that, until they add up. And he gets so dug down into this place of being so used to using this water. Because he saw, maybe he was hurting. Maybe he was hurting and he saw his friend or saw somebody else. They're like, hey, we do this because it helps our pain. We do this because it helps our pain. He said, okay, I'm going to try that. And then eventually that didn't help anymore. So we had to go to one more thing. He goes over to one more thing, and then that starts building up, and that starts building up, and he gets to a point where he can't even live with himself. He put himself in chains, and he'd break them off to put himself right back in them. Eventually, those temporary fixes that he used are going to be the death of him. Eventually they'll just harm him more. If you keep putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg and keep walking on it and think that the Band-Aid's going to fix it, it's going to get a lot worse than where you started. And then you have to take notes of what Jesus did, because I always want to try to line my life up with Jesus, as we should. And he didn't say, when this man ran out of his tomb, ran out of his mountain, he didn't say, why are you here? He didn't say, go away, you're unclean. He said, come out. Because that man had the courage. He knew who he was talking to. He knew that he was bringing his pain, his torment, to the feet of Jesus. He said, Jesus, Son of the Most High God. And right then and there, life was changed forever. But then you go back to the swine. You go back to the demons. What happened when the demons left? When the demons went into those swine, they didn't go roll around in the mud and have fun. They didn't go party. They ran straight to the water, and that water killed them. Because eventually that water that we all keep running to, that the drugs, it's going to lead to an overdose. We keep running to this, eventually that water is going to be the thing that drowns you. The thing that you rely on, the thing that you build your life around, is going to be the thing that drowns you. And Romans 6:23 says that the wages of sin are death. It doesn't matter how much it makes you feel, it's just temporary. Because the things of the field they'll go away. Everything on this earth will go away. I won't have this skin. I won't have this jacket that I had to put on last second. I won't have any of this. I'll be in a new body, a new land. I'll be made perfect in the image of God. I'll be sitting up there with God, and it won't matter anything that I've done down here as long as I got the blood over me. Then the third reason that I don't see, and I'm preaching to myself when I say this one. I'm really preaching to myself through the whole thing. But this one, the reason we don't start using the living water is because we're scared. Not just like scared because it's just a scary thing to do, but we're scared of what we're going to lose. We're scared that we're going to lose our relationships with our friends. We're scared that 8-year relationship with somebody who really hasn't been doing too good, and you know that, we're scared that we're going to have to leave them because they're not going the same way, because we don't walk the same way as they walk. We're scared that we're going to have to leave our family because our family's just too much for us at the time. We're scared that we're going to be overwhelmed and not know what to do. And I want to go over to Matthew 14, verse 27. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter come out of the boat, he walked on the water to Jesus. But when he saw the wind and the boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried, Jesus, Lord, save me. God called him out of the boat. It's very clear that he called him out of the boat. Just as I've been called out of the boat. Just that every single one of us has been called out of the boat into a different kind of ministry. Into a different kind to reach a different person at a different time, because that's who God made us to be. But if you look, Peter had no problem stepping out of the boat. You know those Sundays or those Wednesday service, or maybe you go to a conference and you're just fired up for God. You're like, oh man, what can I do next? Where can I go? Where can I run? I want to do everything for God. And then God's like, oh, hey, how about you go talk to that person? You're like, hold on a second. They know more than me. I don't really want to do that. Or you get so excited, you're like, man, there's nothing that God can't do. He can move mountains. He can heal me. He called Lazarus out of the grave. And then he's like, hey, how about you step onto the platform? I've never talked in front of anybody. But I mean, Moses had a speech impediment, but he was still called. But so Peter stepped out of the boat, and he was real focused on God. He saw him. straight ahead, just walking, one foot after the other. I think that's how you walk on water. I've never done it. Right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. And then he begins to look around. He gets to looking, and he sees the waves coming up. He sees the rain coming down. He sees lightning, and he hears thunder, and he is scared. Fell right there. You know, what happened is it's not that Peter wasn't walking right. It's not like he stepped out of line of where God put. He just began to realize that what he was doing, it wasn't natural. It wasn't normal. But I got something for that. God didn't call me to be normal. God didn't call me to be natural. God called me to be a water-walking, tongue-talking, chain-breaking, fireproof, sea-splitting man of God who is holy and pursuing the living water. It doesn't mean that the world's not going to be scary. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to get overwhelmed by what's happening. But what it does mean is that I don't draw my strength from the world. I don't drink from the same water as you. I drink from the living water. God delivered me. John 16:33, he overcame it. I don't have to fight it anymore because he overcame it. I don't need drugs. I don't need alcohol. I don't need to cuss. I don't need one more girl, one more thing. I need Jesus, the living water. That is who fuels me. That's who fuels my tank. And it overflows. Now I'm up here. I'm pouring out because I let him live in me. I don't have to draw from what everybody else draws from. I don't have to live the same way you live because last I checked, he called me to be holy. He called me to be perfect as he was perfect on this earth. So I really want to check what kind of water you're drawing from. What kind of water are you drinking daily? Because I know I try to wake up every day and drink the living water. And there's some days that I might get thrown off. But just as he did Peter, as soon as you call out, as soon as you say, Lord, help me, he's right there. He didn't hesitate. He didn't say, well, maybe you shouldn't have done that. He didn't wag his finger. He just said, I got you. Picked him up and put him back in the boat. So, as I'm closing, I just want everybody to close your eyes real quick. I'm not going to make y'all raise your hands and put your hands up. But I just want everybody, without distraction, just think, what kind of water, and be honest, because this is between you and God. What kind of water are you in? What are you drinking? What's coming up out of you? Are you known as the guy that's over here cussing and have a party on the weekend, but then back Sunday? Or are you the guy that they're like, oh, I shouldn't do that around him because he's different? I just want everybody in here to know that the living water is ready to burst up out of you if you just begin to let him move.
I'm not a dad, but I assume that's kind of what a dad feels like. That just feels good, seeing him up here pouring his heart out, the message that he's had for a long time. And I'll add to that, when he talked about Instagram, everyone in our youth group knows how I feel about social media. I don't have it. I hate it. I think it's garbage. That's my opinion. I know it has uses. I don't care about the uses either. All right, I can text. I can call. There's no one in the world that I have to talk through Snapchat. Not a single person. But one thing Hunter did when he talked about what waters was he partaking, and he mentioned that Instagram was getting a little bit more pushes than the Bible app. You deleted that, right? There you go. I believe it says to cut off the hand that caused you to sin against, right? And I feel like that's what we don't do enough, is we keep thinking we can stand in both waters. And like he said, he doesn't know how to walk on water, but I'm sure it's hard to walk on real curvy water and this leg's just going straight. I'm sure that's tough and impossible. So he's preaching something that he's actually done. And that's what I appreciate even more, is he's testing more of the waters, the living waters. And it's been obvious over the last couple months, seeing his fire, seeing how engaged he is when we talk about the Bible and when we talk about prayer. And I really think that is the ultimate push going into whatever next year is going to partake in. And that's going to be, what waters are you walking in? Are you going to continue to walk in COVID fear? Are you going to continue to walk in the push of whatever agenda is getting to you, or the push of whatever social media is pushing to you? Are you going to allow that to continue to affect how you're walking? Because it will. And I've put urges to our Bible study youth group. Cut it off. Cut off the stuff that causes you to sin against thee. So maybe that's a word for even some of you that aren't in the youth. Maybe delete that Instagram, delete that Facebook, delete whatever it is that is taking your time. If you feel drowned by the world, what waters are you walking in? So that's a very good message, and I appreciate that message. It hits me too. But I want to make sure we get a couple announcements in before we end service. The Christmas service will be, that's next Sunday, correct? Next Sunday is our Christmas.